Hi, my name is Carol, and we're going to discuss autonomous solution entering into China. In this presentation, we're going to go over our scorecard, country commercial guides, macro environmental analysis, financial analysis, competitive analysis, and mode of entry. Autonomous Solutions Incorporated was formed in the year 2000 when it first contracted with John Deere to create an automated orchard solution. They have hands in industries such as mining, automotive, agricultural, and governmental agencies. They focus on the teleoperation, remote control, and fully automated systems. ASI focuses on full farm automation, and they pride themselves in the 24-hour non-stop autonomous solution that helps farm overcome labor shortages.
We had a large selection process for the countries that we were learning about for ASI to enter. We initially started with 20 of them, and these countries that we selected had two major requirements. First, when looking at the country commercial guides, we wanted these countries to have opportunities within the agricultural sector and also with automation in the technology sector. That was the first requirement that we had for these 20 countries. The second was there is a readiness index that KPMG sets out. It is the Autonomous Vehicles Readiness Index, and it gauges the country's capacity to adopt and integrate autonomous vehicles, and it includes things such as charging stations availability and population acceptance to new technology. We also use the MPI to eliminate country after country with those initial 20 to get down to our real analysis of 8 countries, which included China, India, Turkey, Paraguay, Egypt, Singapore, Brazil, and New Zealand.
So when we started formulating our MPI index and chose the criteria for our scorecard, we chose dimensions that would were important to ASI's competitive advantages and essentially their success as we entered into China. One of the biggest ones was market size and growth. We wanted to make sure that the markets that they were entering would justify entry. We also took into account labor costs, inflation, and manufacturing productivity. Just because with producing the tractors, those were critical. And then also commercial infrastructure and country risk. And essentially, this all fed into our NPI as we analyzed those 20 countries. Sorry, one sec.
We first look at the financial performance of some of these countries. These top 5, China, India, Turkey, Paraguay, and Egypt, were the top 5 countries on our MPI that we wanted to look at. We looked at different indicators, mostly on the country's financial performance. First, on the tax burden, which is the income percentage that individuals can expect to come home with. Monetary freedom, which is the price control and stability of inflation within each country. Trade freedom, which is the lack of barriers for tariffs and non-tariffs for imports and exports. The investment freedom, which is how many investment restrictions are placed upon investments such as capital gains, reparations, and other taxes. And lastly, the financial freedom of the country, which is the banking efficiency and the independence from government controls. These were compared against other countries. We looked and we saw different outliers, such as Paraguay had the smallest tax burden, where people in that country, they could expect to take home more. Other things such as investment freedom, we noticed that Turkey and Paraguay also had a larger freedom to choose and to take home the investments that they made, whereas China, they actually scored lower on this investment freedom only because the country's government has large hands in those sectors. Depending on which mode of entry we choose is how different financial aspects within ASI are in their favor or not. So things such as the tax burden, they wouldn't have so much effect on if we were to go into the country ourselves, maintain our own equipment and create our own robots within the country as if we were to license or joint venture with another country.
Next slide. So when we looked at the macroeconomics, essentially we're just looking at different opportunities and threats from the different countries. China, India really stood out as far as opportunities. They have fairly good infrastructure. We're planning to invest in it. Some of the weaknesses that we saw in Turkey, Paraguay, and Egypt were that they had a lot of bureaucracy and just regulatory issues. Overall, after analyzing different barriers, China and India came out on top for macroeconomics.
Okay, for the competitive analysis, the market condition can be effectively addressed if we identify the key drivers that make feasible this business and be successful this business of the autonomous trucks in China. If we ask the right questions, we are going to be able to get it and take the right decisions. For example, the question is, what is the overall current size of the market? What is the potential growth of the market in the near future? So if we go through that, we have to analyze, we have to define our customers that they need this autonomous truck. We have to find out the penetration rate of this technology that depends of the nature of the equipment that we will introduce. For example, we have to compare it between China and India. Who leads the market size? The second question, for example, is the autonomous trucks that we're going to penetrate, it will satisfy this market. So if we go through that, we have to analyze how we're going to provide this solution to the agricultural sector, which is basically what it is. So we have to analyze the level of automation. And what I try to explain with this is how can we improve efficiently, and how can we improve the productivity, for example, for the crops, yield like cereals or grains, corn, wheat, rice, and others. Also, in the solutions, we have to investigate the application and customization. For example, how can we apply these to the seed sowing and harvesting, tillage, irrigation, spraying, fertilization? Another question could be, is this autonomous trucks that we have in mind will satisfy the market? Now we're going to start talking about the risk and how we'll restrain business to serve small farmers, for example. And other questions, for example, in the potential customer, how we gonna target that in our competition, how the competition is gonna be out there, direct, indirect, national, international. Okay. Oh, for now. Too much.
Okay.
We also looked into mode of entry, and we discussed the various ways of entering China, which could be through licensing. Licensing is a very rapid growth in China, and that's one of the advantages. The disadvantages is a cultural difference. We would have to have somebody that knows the culture very well to be able to introduce our autonomous company into China. Then joint venture, one of the advantage is we are able to invest into the foreign companies that have restrictions. The disadvantage is that we could get taken advantage sometimes when we partner with a Chinese partner. We're not very familiar with the culture. They sometimes take advantage on how things are run without our company's permission. Mergers and acquisitions tend to be a little hostile, especially for the Chinese culture. They tend to be very community oriented, so merging and acquiring might be a little too hostile, and we might lose labor and potentially lose money. In conclusion, we decided that joint venturing with Qingdao ADM Trade Company is a good company. It's a good way to introduce autonomous solutions into China. They're a small company that are well developed in construction machines and agriculture machinery, and they're partnered with a lot of countries like Canada, Africa, United States, and because of that, we chose joint venturing. Thank you very much.